Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of 3BL Media and Triple Pundit's Learn from Home webinar series. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Frank O'Brien Bernini, Chief Sustainability Officer of Owens Corning and the longest serving CSO at any public company. Anyone who has worked in the sustainability space for any period of time knows that a lot has changed. I've been in this space for over 10 years now, and I've seen the way people talk about sustainability and estimate its value shift massively even over that time. So today I'm super excited to sit down with Frank to talk about his perspective on how our sector has evolved and how companies can continue to keep the focus on people and planet even in difficult times. Particularly excited given how well Owens Corning is known for sustainability leadership. They were ranked #1 on the 100 Best Corporate Citizens list for the past 2 years in a row, and also named one of the world's most ethical companies by Ethisphere Institution for 3 consecutive years. As a reminder, we'll break for audience questions about halfway through our conversation. So if you have any questions for Frank, you can submit them at any time using the green box below. Frank, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, Mary, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to it, and I'm glad for that intro. I wore my hiking boots. That was a nice intro video, so looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. Yeah, get us all in the nature-minded mood here.
Yeah.
So that came great to kick things off. So to get things started, clearly there is a lot going on right now, right? From everything going on with the election, the public health and economic concerns surrounding the coronavirus, and renewed conversations around racial and social justice. But before we talk about where we are now, I'd love to start with where we've come. As the longest tenured CSO in a public company, I'm wondering what were some of the concerns and challenges that you saw when you first got started and how you feel the sustainability space has evolved since then.
Sure. I think that's a really nice place to start. So maybe I'll start a little bit about sort of my background and how it overlaps with how we got started in this area in Owens Corning and kind of how it's evolved in the last 20 years or so. I kind of got initiated into this area of environmentalism, if you will, from my mother. My mother was an environmental advocate. We lived in a neighborhood where we had an industrial chemical factory in our backyard, and for fun, we would go and sort of watch on evenings, watch the stacks burn off, and she became very interested in trying to figure out what all those particles all over the neighborhood cars and driveways and all what that was all about, and drove for some real transparency in what was coming out of the stacks in our neighborhood plants. So that's kind of where I initially got introduced to the idea of environmental activism. I went on in college. I joined this class. It was kind of became a major in the university that I was in, called the Center for Resourceful Living. It's what we would now call sustainability, but it was focused on renewable energy, energy efficiency, agriculture that was sort of organic, and so kind of what we call sustainability now. But that was back in the late 70s. Then I started a solar design build firm in Vermont, then went back to school and got my master's in mechanical engineering with a focus on solar energy. And during that time, Owens Corning supported my research work with a fellowship. So that was my introduction to Owens Corning. They very graciously supported that research work, and I had the opportunity to come out and present that, at which time I was offered a job by Owens Corning. And I had to look on a map to see where Ohio was. I was from the East Coast, but had this job offer to this amazing facility in Granville, Ohio, that is the Owens Corning Science and Technology Center, and have been working there ever since, coming out for maybe a 3-year job to a Fortune 500 company. And, 38 years later, here I am still with Owens Corning, and, just an awesome company. And so now kind of fast forward, I had various different roles in research and development, science and technology through that time. And in the early 2000s, I was leading R&D for the company. And that's when the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, first kind of introduced in a very strong way that human activity clearly had a link to climate change. And concurrently, USGBC's lead building standards were really starting to gain ground. So we started to see both a market drive on the green building front and a sort of call to action on our environmental footprint side to really start to develop an idea around what was starting to be talked about as this area of sustainability. So, getting all the way back to your question around kind of where things have come from and where they started, we started like most companies, kind of focused on our environmental footprint and trying to get our own house in order, but very quickly started to see a market opportunity for green or more sustainable products. So kind of morphed into the area of product sustainability. And then over the subsequent 20 years, the whole idea of sustainability has just broadened and broadened and broadened to go from sort of the environmental footprint to products and what we call our handprint, and then or the positive impact of our people and products, to now include safety and wellness, inclusion and diversity, community engagement. So we've really seen over the last 20 years that sustainability has really become integrated into every aspect of the way a company does business.
That's super interesting to think and remember about just the way that this focus has shifted, from thinking about visible pollution and how we can work to remedy some of that, to thinking about climate change and their overall global contribution to what's going on in the state of our environment, to now really sustainability, as you say, being a part of almost everything that a company does, from people and products all the way up to your large global contributions to some of these other more massive challenges. So as we're kind of talking a little bit about today and where we are now, I'm also curious about how your approach to not only environmental, but as you're saying, also social sustainability has changed in light of some of these realities that we've confronted in 2020.
Yeah, what I would say, that's another great question, and it always kind of has you kind of reflect and think about, what your priorities are, what you're focused on. One of the tremendous, I think, things about sustainability is it's really quite different than any other sort of business process that we have, in that, most of our business processes have us thinking about 1, 2, 3, maybe 5-year aspirations or goals on what we're trying to get done. Sustainability is, at least in our company and probably in most companies, the only area where we really look and think hard about, where do we want to be 10 years from now? And as a result, when you have sort of minor fluctuations, it's hard to think about the 2020 pandemic as a minor fluctuation, or the racial sort of injustice we're seeing as minor fluctuations. But when you stand back and you say, okay, we in late 2019 set our 2030 goals, and those goals had very specific focus on health and safety and wellness. Safety being, an aspiration for 0 injuries, and wellness for 0 lifestyle-induced disease, and which kind of gave framework to, like, how do we think about the pandemic, and how do we think about having 0 disease associated with our operations in this sort of new world of the global pandemic. And on the inclusion and diversity side, we had set very specific inclusion and diversity goals, and sort of started down that path kind of well in advance of the George Floyd murder and kind of all of that strife that arose from that. But we were able to kind of stand back and say, we've got a goal, we've got metrics, we need to accelerate and make them sort of more urgent, and to have the kind of conversations in our company that maybe we hadn't imagined. So it may be like accelerated and made more urgent our tactics, but by the sort of gift of long-term 10-year kinds of goals, I think, no matter what is, disrupts or comes at you in any particular year. It could be a market fluctuation, housing starts are up, housing starts are down, whatever, that you can stand back and say, we've got a 10-year plan here, and we may move resources and move priorities, but we know where we're going, and maybe the GPS heads us a little bit to the left or right, but we know where we're going to be 10 years from now.
Interesting. Yeah. I guess that really does speak to the power of long-term planning and the value in really having everyone on your team working together toward a common purpose. And, even when unforeseen circumstances happen, such as, so many of the challenges that we've seen come to the forefront this year, that, hey, if we all really have our eye on the same goal and we know where we're going to be headed, we can sort of shift our focus and really deal with what's super important right now, but still keep our eye on that long-term prize. That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's that is the way sustainability goals work, because if I would say if you do them right, you're setting aspirational goals that you really don't have a roadmap for how you're going to achieve them. You just know through your materiality work that the world expects you to attain those kind of goals, that your stakeholders, whether investors or customers or communities, employees, expect you to meet those kind of goals. So the fact that any particular year kind of there's a bump in the road doesn't really upset them, because you didn't have a firm sort of waterfall chart. You've got a hypothesis, and at any point in time, you just got to course correct. And I think that's what we've seen through 2020 for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I just want to quickly ask you about, employees and communities before we break for audience questions. And as a reminder, if anyone has any questions for Frank, go ahead and add those down in the chat box below. But, as you've mentioned, really about these shifts in employee expectations, consumer expectations, those expectations from other stakeholders, what we've seen through the course of our reporting, as we've entered this time of the pandemic, and really a lot of those expectations specifically around keeping employees and communities safe and economically whole amidst this really difficult time we're in, those expectations have really increased. And we really hear that, stakeholders are saying that the way that companies respond to the pandemic and are looking out for their people really will shape the way that they view, these companies into the future. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how Owens Corning has responded and acted to put people first, during this time.
Yeah, I think that this is an area where it could be an overused phrase, but I'll use it because I think it's made such a difference for us, and that's throughout this entire year. The power in tone at the top, we had just and built on our safety, zero injuries and zero lifestyle induced disease for wellness. The idea that was possible, came right from the top of our company, from our board, from our CEO, from the leadership team, that we were going to learn everything that we could about this pandemic. We were going to reach out to science, whether it was the CDC or the World Health Organization, or our own chief medical officer, and understand as much as we could about what was called at that time the novel coronavirus, because nobody knew anything about it, and so we all had to learn together. But that tone at the top that said, we're going to keep our people safe, and this isn't an or where we're going to do this instead of business, but we're going to figure out how to conduct our business that in all regions where we operate was deemed essential business. We're going to figure out how to do that in a way that keeps our people safe. And this isn't about balance. It's about and. We're going to be safe, and we're going to operate our business in a way that supports our employees, that keeps them employed, that supports our customers and lets them continue to do their work in their communities. So I think that for me, that from tone on the top, from the top, translated with, we have a COVID-19 management team that has been focused on all the, since early on, since this first hit China. That's when we saw it first. We've got operations in China. But to translate that science into specific protocols, including PPE use and temperature checks and health screens for 18,000 employees, daily health screens, daily temperature checks, where we're making sure that our facilities are safe, have allowed us to operate throughout this in a way that has led to virtually no transmission inside our facilities, and which is obviously something we're very proud of on the one side, but I mean, these are our coworkers, and it's us, right? So we're immensely happy that we've been able to manage this.
That's fantastic, and that's such a huge feat, given the challenging time that we're in, and the number of employees that you all have, that many of whom don't have the ability to work from home, that you've been able to really accomplish that goal of keeping everyone safe and healthy, and keeping your employee family whole during what's really a challenging time for all of us.
Yeah, all the thanks and praise go to our operators who work in the plants every day and put up with these protocols that we send their way for mask wearing and all that stuff, social distancing while they're trying to do their work. But yeah, the heroes throughout this are the folks that kind of put up with our protocols every day and are keeping their coworkers safe.
That's great. Yeah, it's small steps that we can all take to keep each other safe. That's always great. I think this is kind of a good segue into our break for audience questions. We do have some questions coming in from the audience. If anybody has anything that they want to add, go ahead and add your questions in the green box below. But the first question we have coming from the audience is, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned about sustainability strategy in your time at Owens Corning so far?
Yeah, I would say probably the most important one is that if you can figure out how to make it real to more people and have sustainability be about the way you operate your business, it becomes less about the chief sustainability officer or less about the sustainability team or the sustainability organization, and more about seeing possibility in how to operate a company that that doesn't balance environmental, social, and economic, but really kind of compresses that Venn diagram into total overlap and allows you to operate a company with economic progress, environmental progress, social progress concurrently, not sort of like in balance, if you will. I think historically sustainability folks like us have maybe done a disservice by talking about the balance of those three rather than kind of creative and innovatively integrating them to coexist and advance all three concurrently.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I think that is kind of that nuance. It's small, but I think it really does make a big difference. When you're talking about balancing something, it almost sounds as if it's inherently opposite, right? That you have to figure out a way to make these two things work together rather than them being interconnected, and really being able to complement each other as you go forward, which leads nicely into our next question, actually. Someone is asking, when it comes to this type of sustainability strategy and keeping your focus on sustainability goals, how can companies work to better engage their suppliers in this type of work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's one that we continuously ask ourselves because this whole area that the sustainability world calls Scope 3 emissions, the emissions associated with the goods and services that you purchase. That's one of the key reasons to engage suppliers. Another reason is that suppliers, by engaging suppliers, you open up the knowledge base, the skills base, the capabilities base to help you solve the problems you're trying to solve. So suppliers are really, really powerful. And just like collaboration with customers, I think it sort of all starts with having a conversation about shared goals, or what is the supplier trying to get done? What are we trying to get done? What could we get done together that would make a big difference? And this is an area for because we have the same conversation on the other side with our customers, right? This is an area for really, I don't know if it's total transparency, but constructive transparency in what it means to the customer and what it means to the supplier to advance in a particular area. For example, if we have a customer that's asking us for increased recycled content or reduce embodied carbon, then it's really important for us to understand where the value comes from that for our customer. Is it their customer who's asking for it? Is there value in the marketplace for that? So that we can then prioritize that work and make big things happen to like mesh with our customers' expectations. And in the same way, one of the first questions, and it's a valid question that a supplier would ask us if we're asking them for reduce embodied carbon in the products they're selling us, is, what's it worth to you? Are you willing to pay more? Are you willing to shift share to us? And those are conversations that have to happen, because I mean, in the end, it's the business models of sustainability that are going to make progress scalable. I mean, we can all do a little bit to build a relationship together or something like that, but in the end, it's to create scale, it's got to be embedded in the way we do business together.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And we do have one more question from the audience I wanted to sneak in here before we move on. But someone's asking here, like, what are your biggest challenges when it comes to materials, especially in light of some of these consumer preferences that you've already referenced a little bit, things like a shift away from single-use plastic, a desire towards more lightweighting from some people to reduce that footprint. I'm wondering what some of those challenges are here.
Yeah, so sticking with the examples that you gave, Mary, I think everybody in the world is well aware of the challenges around single-use plastics, and there's a lot of kind of focus on trying to solve that problem of oceans plastics and all that sort of thing. And that's awesome. That is not like the game where we play. Our material systems tend to be pretty durable in that, they're maybe in a car part is 8, 10, 12, 15 years in service. A wind blade where our glass fibers go into might be 30 years in service. A house with insulation in it might be 200 years in service. So our end of life challenges are a little bit different, but they're still really important, because if you think about, let's go to the roof on your house, right? So if you live in a single family house, that roof is replaced, let's say every 30, 35 years or something like that. When it gets replaced, the tons that come off your roof are way more than all what you've recycled in your home recycling for the whole time that roof was on your house. So it really matters that you figure out how to recycle that at the end of its life. So those are the challenges that we're focused on right now, is the end of life of these things that are built to be durable, right? It almost feels like the opposite from making it easy to recycle. I mean, we make these things to last, a wind blade in the sun for 30 years, rotating, at high speeds and not falling apart, right? And then at the end of their life, we want to be able to take them apart and recover the glass fiber and recover the resins. And figuring out how to do that to keep those materials out of landfills is a really big focus of ours right now. And we have an aspiration in this area of circular economy, part of our 2030 goals, that every material that's extracted for an Owens Corning product stays in the economy indefinitely. So, that little grain of sand that's extracted to become a glass fiber to go into a wind turbine blade, we don't want its life to go to waste, right? We want it to like turn into something after the wind blade and become something else. And and not be buried somewhere. So that's a big challenge for us. Certainly embodied carbon. Everyone is focused on CO2 reduction in manufacturing, and the embodied carbon, or for those not sort of talking about it every day, that's the carbon emissions associated with making a product. So that embodied carbon is a really big focus for us in really across all three of our businesses: our roofing business, our insulation business, and our composites business. So circular economy and embodied carbon are like the topics today.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah, and it's interesting, the dynamic there, where you look at a material that's meant to last much longer than most materials that we interact with, and then to think about what end of life might mean for something like that, it's definitely a different set of challenges there. But to kind of go back to our initial conversation, we were kind of focusing on employees, on communities. I would briefly like to touch on, social, racial, economic justice. We're seeing increased interest in how companies are responding here. And I'm wondering how this dialogue has, affected conversations within Owens Corning. Has it sparked any new conversations in terms of the way that you're dealing with employees around this, or how have things played out for you in this area?
Yeah, I think it's played out for Owens Corning in probably a very similar way to how it's playing out in corporate America, not just America, corporate world, and that is that there's a growing expectation from our employees, from our communities, really from our investors, because they often ask about this as well. Our suppliers ask how we're dealing with this, to essentially have a point of view that turns into action, not just a sort of casual point of view on these topics of social justice, the Black Lives Matters kind of movement, that the social injustice that we've all kind of experienced, but to have an actionable kind of point of view around this. And we started down a path in 2018 with putting in place a vice president of inclusion and diversity, Leah McGuire. And Leah has really been kind of leading a number of conversations, the most important of which I think is very similar to the one we had around sustainability, of sort of like getting everybody in the game, where she's helped us create the expectation for leaders to have what we call courageous conversations. And those are small, intimate conversations with groups of 10 to 20 employees to talk about kind of what's on their mind, what's in the way, how are they feeling about this, not just to be like a therapy session, but really to try to understand where our employees are hurting. We have very racially diverse plants all around the world, and we want to create the expectations for leaders in our plants and create the education so that we all know how to lead in this space in a way that has our employees wanting to come to work here every day and feeling like they're included, feeling like they're valued. So this is really exciting. We've got basically all the vice presidents in our company having these periodic conversations with an open group, like people just sign up for these, and we started those in person, and then in about February, I guess it was, maybe the first week of March, we transitioned those to virtual meetings, and we didn't really know how that was going to work, but I'll tell you, it's working awesomely. I think as we've all figured out how to have these collaborations virtually with the ability to chime in chat boxes, and for folks that might be a little timid to say something, to be able to get their thoughts into the mix of the conversation. It's been terrific, and Leah is doing a great job. Again, creating the expectations for leaders, not like doing it herself, right? It's helping us learn together.
That's great. That's so powerful, and it really, as you're saying, it sort of mirrors the approach that you had to sustainability that's been really effective, where it's, hey, how can we mobilize employees to be key levers of what we're doing here? How can we bring them in to not only be part of the conversation, but really to drive what the conversation is and drive what those priorities are by listening and finding out more about what people's concerns are, what their suggestions are, and really allowing that to chart the path forward. And I think that's such a powerful approach that we can all learn so much from. And our time is going by very quickly here, but just to wrap up our conversation, you're speaking here to an audience of business leaders who are looking to balance their response to what's happening today with their long-term ambitions to play a more active role in shaping a better world for tomorrow. And I'm wondering what advice you would give to them about how to set long-term goals when the needs of the present are so urgent and the future is in many ways still uncertain.
Yeah, that's a it's a quandary for everybody, right? So I would just say like how we thought about it and how we did it, and I think it worked well for us. And that is to start with what sort of the world expects of you. The tools of materiality really are helpful here. The UN SDGs are really helpful here. The Sustainable Development Goals to inform and to educate. But start with like what the world expects of a company like you, and maybe specifically what your stakeholders expect from you specifically. And then kind of overlay that, kind of like any business strategy, right? You overlay that with what you're capable of, what capacity you have to understand, to advance, to advocate. So you've got, what is expected, what we're capable of, and then totally put on the side what you think you can get done, and set goals based on what is expected of you, and then stand back and look at the gap between your capabilities and what is expected. And there's some really good tools for this, right? The Science-Based Target Initiative that prescriptively can help you figure out what CO2 reduction is expected of your company. Ours is like a 50% reduction by 2030. So there are good tools to help guide what is expected. Then stand back and first you're going to, oh, holy crap, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. But that's okay. That means you're in the zone of aspiration, because your folks that you're going to ask to take this journey with you are going to be so much smarter, so much more innovative, so much more creative than the few folks sitting around a room trying to imagine what these goals should be. That challenging the organization to attain these goals that you don't know how you're going to do is just it's invigorating, it's exciting, and it matters. So that would be my recommendation: is don't handcuff yourself, because your teams are way smarter than you. Set ambitious goals that need to get done, and challenge the teams to figure it out.
Fantastic. Well, the zone of aspiration, I love that. Hopefully we can all strive to be living there as we look towards 2021 and beyond. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time today. It was great to speak with you. I know we all learned a lot, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, Mary, thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone for joining us. Have a great day.